Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa amma ba'd. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. So we have a talk coming up at I think 1:15, so it's not too far from now. So we'll probably just do a short session right now, give everyone a break, and then we can have another session after that. Just going to probably cover one, if not at the most two, diseases right now. So the next one is falsehood, lying, and dishonesty. You can sort of wrap all of these into one. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His holy book, after A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَاجْتَنِبُوا قَوْلَ الزُّورِ, that stay away from قَوْلَ الزُّورِ. Zur is something which is batil, something which is false, something which is sinful, and the idea here is that you should refrain from lying. And there's a riwayah in both Bukhari and Muslim where the Prophet ﷺ, he warned people to beware of falsehood. So what is lying? Lying is to speak something which is contrary to reality or contrary to fact. And this can be done both intentionally, and there are some people who are so careful that they avoid even saying something that unintentionally is what we call khilaf al-waqi', that is not concordant with reality, even though technically that's not considered lying, right? So if someone asks you what time it is and you told them that, oh, it's 5:30 and it's actually 6:30, it's khata, it's a mistake, right? We won't necessarily say that person is lying. But people who are very assiduous about the truth, they're careful not to, number one, they don't try to speak too much so something false doesn't come out. Man samata naja, whoever is quiet, they're going to be successful. And that's one of the benefits of qillatul kalam. I had this one friend, very pious brother, mashallah, hafiz of Quran. I used to actually do muraja'a with him, so I would recite to him, he would recite to me, and very soft, he was like a lamb, a very soft-tempered individual, but very brilliant student. He had some of the top marks in the country. He was going to go into medicine, and what happened, like when you would talk to him, he would say something, and almost after every statement, he's like, I don't know. It was awkward, right? It seems like you're not certain about everything, but that's the way that he used to cover up every sentence of his, because he said, I said something, but I don't know the reality if that's really true what I said. So he said he'll sort of follow up with saying, I don't know. I'm not necessarily advocating that you're doing that, but it just gives us an example of people who are very careful about what they say, lest something come out that is dishonest or not concordant to the truth. And this idea of being truthful and curing oneself of the disease of lying or dishonesty becomes particularly of great import in the current context in which we live. And this is one of the signs towards the end of time that hardly you'll be able to find a person of amana. Can you tell me where I can find a good car mechanic, by the way? Everyone rips you off. And as soon as you remove regulatory from, like, medicine's like super highly regulated, and despite that, people find a way to. I know what happens I don't deal with billing. I don't know how much anything costs. I just get a salary and I come home. But when you're in private practice, everything's money, and I do know of people who are out there who tell me about the type of indiscretionary practices that people do to earn more money. And at the Moffitt, one of the things, because you're a tertiary care center, you get a lot of referral cases. So cases that no one else really can deal with, or they're very advanced and need transplants, then they start coming to Moffitt. And as a policy, anything that was seen on the outside, the diagnosis has to be reviewed. You have to remake the diagnosis. And the data shows probably in about 10% of cases, you're going to overturn the outside diagnosis because there was a mistake or inadequate workup or so on and so forth. Because if you have an expert consult, they're going to pick up things that other people miss. So we get to see a lot of the stuff, what that goes on the outside, and you're just like looking at the tray, and you're like, why did you do that test? You didn't have to. And like, they just do it on every patient. And if you look at some of the, like a bone marrow biopsy, shouldn't cost you $10,000. That's a lot of money. But it's this gray zone. Like, you could maybe get away with it. You're not necessarily lying, and it gets gray. And human beings, they're that people are greedy. So if you can somehow, people talk themselves somehow into it, saying that it's okay for me to charge a patient to do X, Y, and Z. Anyway, this is one of the signs at the end of times, that it's very hard to find people who are truly, truly honest. Not to say that such people don't exist. I mean, when my family was in Zambia, we had to purchase a car for them, and so we were looking for a car, and one of the brothers who was selling a car, I guess that we were very interested in, we went to go, and I think Abdullah probably went, or one of these guys went to go and check the car. Maybe Sheikh Zayd was there. He went to go and check the car, and the mufti who was going to sell the car, he said, I can't show you the car today. And we really wanted to see the car. He said, we can't show it to you today. He says, why now? He said, because it's getting dark outside now. You might not be able to see any type of deficiency in the car. Come in the morning when there's light so you can see the car properly. So there's still, alhamdulillah, people who are honest, that don't want to make any, take advantage of any other person. So I was saying that this is a particular relevance, this disease of the heart of lying in this age of which is nothing short of mass disinformation. Right now they even do these things called deep fakes, right? I don't know if you guys know about this. Like, so you can sort of create, you can even do it with, electronically, but you can make overlay a voice over someone else's, video, and make it sound like they're saying things that they never said. And so how do you even know, right? You don't know what anything is. You don't know what anything is real. And with AI now, I think Time Magazine had published this article, like they issued all these pictures of individuals that look all the world like real people, but they don't exist. There's no such person. It's completely computer generated, right? Pulling on different features. That's how AI works. They're pulling on different features of individuals and putting together and reconstructing completely fake people. And it's not only there, it's in the media as well. So, we had a recent president, I won't tell you what his name was, but they've done a tally of how many lies, basically, or untruths that he told over his 4 years. And it totals about 30,750. So that's a lot of untrue statements. If you actually take the average, it's about 20-something every single day. And actually, they didn't only follow that. This is like in the Washington Post, I think, right? Washington Post are sort of a mustanad source that they actually did this analysis, but they actually looked at how many truths were being told depending on the year of presidency. So year one, it was like 16 per day. Then it went to 20 a day. Year two, year three went to 22, and then obviously it was election year and went up to 39. Right? It's election year. You got to get elected. So, and when you put so many false statements out there, believe it or not, there's people who believe it, right? And this becomes a real problem. And one of the reasons it's a real problem and why this is so bad, people inherently, people might think it's easy to lie, but it's really not. It's actually for human beings, whether you're a Muslim or not, people have an inherent aversion to lying. And I actually really thought about why is that the case. Like, for example, we talked about this before in one of the previous talks, that there's a very high barrier for people to kill another individual. It requires some type of lubricant typically for people to go out over that edge, whether it's drugs or alcohol or something, because inherently human beings have something built in them that stops them from going that far. There's also an extremely deep barrier that exists to lying. People just don't like to lie. And I think one of the reasons why that's developed, if you want to take an evolutionary biological perspective on this, is that if you don't have some element of truth in human interactions, then there can be no social contract. You cannot build a community. You cannot build a society. And one of the times this comes up is that, for example, we're used to just going to the store and buying something, right? You go to the store, you buy something, you come home. It's simple. So recently I was looking for a bed for my 3-year-old. And so we went and wanted to buy a used bed. So we were just looking for like a used bed set type of thing, furniture to buy. So we were looking on, so I found something on, I don't know, I think it was OfferUp or something, one of these websites. So, but this guy was like way out in the boonies. So I had to drive way out to go over there. I didn't know what to expect. And he probably didn't know what to expect. And it was just like this very delicate dance, right? I was like, can I pay you with this? He's like, no, I don't want to take a check because I don't know you, right? And then I don't know what's going to happen. Is he going to take me in the trailer there and lock me up and I can't come out? I mean, it was because we drove into this one parking lot and there's these big trailers and he has like all these tattoos and he comes out and you're just like thinking, okay, where am I? You're just, like we were really far out, so there's so much without trust, and so even when I paid him the money, then there was some when we were coming back, I had to take out the money from the bank to give him, but then the bank had closed that day, that one particular branch, and so now he's thinking, oh, so you're not going to pay me now, right? Like there's distrust in a very simple interaction. Like I was very nice with him, he was very nice with me. There wasn't really any inherent problem. And then I could only take out this much money. I was $75 short. I said, can I write you a check? He came to my house. He saw the house. He said, okay, fine. So I gave him, I wrote him a check. And subhanAllah, just the week before, we had put a stop payment on all our checks because of identity theft. So he goes to try to cash it, and then the check bounces. All right? And then he's like, oh, damn Muslims. So... And then his wife is sending me the Wells Fargo thing that now we got charged $12, and I was very apologetic. I was very embarrassed as well. I was like, I'll drive out an hour to give you the money. So I'm like, I'm sorry. This is explaining. I explained it, and finally, alhamdulillah, everything got sorted. But very simple interaction, right? But if there's no trust, people, you can't trust a check. Sometimes, what if you can't trust the money that you give someone? It could be counterfeit. You can't have a society. If the most simple thing can't happen, then you can't have business, you can't build things. Contracting someone to come to your house to do something, they say, oh, we want half of the money up front. This happened with our neighbors. He took half the money and then he took off and he never came back and he doesn't respond to his phone calls. Right? So it becomes a big problem. So human beings have, you could say, in a certain level, must have evolved this idea that we shouldn't be able to lie, because if we can't, then we can't exist. We can't exist together. And so it takes a lot. And you find this sometimes when when you ask people, and if they're lying, if they're not used to lying, right, and you put them on a position where they lie, they're extremely uncomfortable. Right? That's why lie detector tests can probably work, because it's not like a normal situation. There's even physiological changes that are occurring in the individual when they're lying. That's why you can use a lie detector test, right, to tell if a person's lying. It's not a natural state. Although, if there are some people who are just pathological liars, and they just don't care. And when you become accustomed to lying, that becomes a big problem. And I don't know how people can just say bold-faced lies with a poker face, as if it's nothing, unless they're just lying all the time. It happened, we were going to go and eat at some new restaurant that had opened up in, I don't know, some Brandon or something like that, some Indian restaurant. So, family's very particular about, hand cut, all of this kind of things. So we talked to them. They're like, yeah, it's hand cut, halal, yeah, or everything. Okay, so we're like, okay, fine. And I sort of, maybe I'm more lax, and I said, if a Muslim is telling you that is exactly and meets all those criteria, then you should believe it. But once bitten, twice shy. So my wife wasn't satisfied. So we're actually driving over there to go and eat, and she says, let me just call. So she calls the place again, right? It's not like we haven't talked to them again. She's like, can I find out where you get your meat from? They're, oh, we get our meat from such and such place. So she said, okay, let me find out. So then she calls the supplier, and she says, Do you get your meat from here? They're like, no, we don't sell it to them. They're like, aha, got you. The sad thing is, you can't do anything, right? The same thing happened when we were in St. Louis. There was the meat market right next to the masjid. Mufti Minhajuddin, right? He's the Mufti over there in St. Louis. He drives over. It's I won't name the market right now. It doesn't probably make any sense under new management anyway. He comes in and he says, "Can I see your meat?" And the guy is sweating bullets, right? So he said, "Fine." What can he say? No. And so he goes inside because there's no halal monitoring body over there. He goes in and he's like, "This is the meat," and it says something like he's selling it as halal, right? So. It says something like yellow duck chicken. So he takes the sticker, he goes back to his office, literally down the street on Weedman. He goes down the street, he goes back to his office and he calls, yellow duck chicken. He's like, "Do you guys serve halal chicken, or do you have halal chicken?" They're like, "What's halal?" Right? People, they will lie to you to your face, right? Bold-faced lies. But the first time a person lies is usually very it requires a tearing down of a person's nobility and their sharafa to be able to do that. And once you do that, it's not only that they lie, but they also want to spread lies. They enjoy false information. It's like some deep deviancy that sometimes exists within people. They like false information to be out there. Just think about how many WhatsApp forwards you got last year, right? I get all these what and people they really get confused. Like my mom will she forward something to me and they're like, "Bete, is this true?" Right? I'm like, "No, Mom, it's not true." Right? Someone will forward the thing, "Today, for the first time in human history, and only on this day," right? Well, the date of the day exactly correspond to how many years you're alive, right? And then I just sort of did the math, and you sort of think about the algorithm. I'm like, "Mom, that happens every day." She do the math, and then she thought about it. She's like, "That's my brilliant beta," right? She's like, but people somehow enjoy spreading this false stuff, and they just get a kick out of it. That's a disease of the heart. It's like a shaitani sifa, getting amusement out of this, amusement of tricking people, deceiving people, thinking that you're smarter than them, and then spreading evil. And we have to be careful about spreading what we hear. It's enough of a lie to speak everything that you hear. You hear something, you go and say it over there. You hear something there, you go and say it over there, and you didn't even verify the information. If you keep on doing that, you're going to run into spreading false information, and that's something that we've been warned about. Now, giving false evidence 3 times is actually been equated to doing shirk, and there's a very severe punishment for lying, very severe. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ, on one occasion, he was seeing different sights of, you could say, the afterlife, and he saw one individual that basically the angel, or it's probably the angel, was taking the hook and putting it into the mouth like this, right? And then pulling the hook until it split the side of his cheek all the way to his ear, right? And then he would take it out, and then it would reform, and then he would put it in again, and he would pull it, and it was constant, and this was going to continue until the day of Qiyamah for that individual. This is, the punishment of the barzakh. And then later on, when the explanation came about who was this person, this was the person who used to lie, right? People who lie, who sort of lie from the side of their mouth and sneer and smirk from the side of their mouth. That same spine of your mouth is getting ripped apart, and repeatedly. And Rasulullah was very careful about this. There was a woman who was trying to call her child towards her. And she was trying to lure him by showing that if you come, you can get some, how sometimes you call a horse, come over here, and if the horse comes, there's like there's maybe some wheat or something that the horse will eat. And this is Imam Bukhari saw this as well, right? He traveled very far to get one hadith, and there was a person beckoning to the horse to come, and he didn't have anything to give to the horse. And Imam Bukhari, even after traveling so far to get the hadith, he saw this and he left. He said, this person can lie to a horse, then he might be able to lie on the Prophet ﷺ. He just left all that sacrifice. He was so careful. In fact, before he would enter a hadith into his collection, subhanAllah, so much acceptance, he would pray 2 rak'ah, right, before he entered the hadith. And this is the wara and the taqwa that he had when he was collecting the words of the Prophet ﷺ. So in any case, the woman was luring the child, and he said, do you have anything to give the child if they actually come? And she said, yeah, I do. I have dates. I was going to give him dates. And he said, it's a good thing that you did, because if you didn't, it would have been written for you kidhb, right? It would have been written for you lie. And that's a big deal. I mean, how many times do parents say that, oh, if you do this, I'll get you Sour Patch, and you never get them Sour Patch, right? Oh, if you do this, I'll take you to the park. You don't take them to the park. I mean, it's like this whole history of broken promises, like every single day. It's a good thing that they're 3 or 4 year old and they forget, or else they would never trust anyone in life. But even with people who, like, just because they're young doesn't mean that you don't have to hold true to your promise. That's between us and our own morality. And also closely related to this, and there's a whole different section on this about dhan, but also forming bad opinions about other people. This is called something called like Reba of the heart. And a bad dhan, having a bad opinion about another individual, it's like you're lying on them. And that's why it's considered the most false of speech, even though you didn't say anything, right? So if that person comes and he's maybe a person is just making dhikr in the masjid, and you see them, they're like, man, what a show off. Well, like, why do you think he's showing off? Maybe he's sincerely sitting there. You should not just sort of make up. But if it's based on a reasonable premise, then it's not considered zan. And it's a very delicate balance, because sometimes people in real life, you always have to think the best of everyone, and like, the whole world is nice, and then what's going to happen? You're going to get taken for a ride. So how do you balance not having a bad opinion or lying internally to yourself about that individual and being careful? In fact, was it Ibn Hajar? I forgot who it was, but there's a famous saying that they said that don't trust, from one of the elders, that don't trust a person with your religion, with your family, and with your wealth until you test them 1,000 times. Be very careful. And this is what's that called? This is not considered su'e zan. This is not considered having a bad opinion on another individual, because what you're doing is you're being careful. You're not saying that you're wrong, right? If you said, no, I don't trust you because you're a bad person, then that's a problem. You're just saying, I don't know, right? You're just being neutral. What you can't do is assign a negative value to someone based on any evidence. When there's no evidence, where are you supposed to be? You can say you're just neutral. I don't know if you're bad. I don't need you know if you're good. I need more information. وَإِنْ جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. If a person who is a sinner comes to you with some type of information, verify it. That's what they say. What did they say in the corporate world? Trust but verify. I'm not saying you're lying, but I'm just going to make sure and do my due diligence. So what is the treatment for a heart that tends towards dishonesty and lying and these type of things? Number one is think before you speak. Right? People have verbal diarrhea. There's just like no filter. Right? It doesn't even get processed. It just keeps on just coming out, and they're so imprecise in the way they speak. I mean, take a lesson from the Quran. We had that beautiful talk last night, and you see the precision, absolute precision of the Quran. In fact, one verse, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ وَإِنَّهُ لَقَسَمُ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by the placement of the stars, right, the constellations and the way the stars are placed in the universe. وَإِنَّهُ قَسَمٌ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ. And if you had any idea what a big deal this was, This is a really big qasam. This is a really big oath. And what is the jawabul qasam? وَإِنَّهُ الْقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ. This is a noble Quran. What is the connection between the stars and the Quran? Right? One is a celestial body, or you can say, oh, both of them come from the heavens. But that's not really, but why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swearing by the placement of the stars? And to understand that, you have to have some understanding of physics, and particularly astrophysics and gravitational fields. But we understand that every two bodies that exist in the universe exert a gravitational force against each other, and is inversely proportional to the amount of distance that exists between those two bodies. So actually, technically, as I'm sitting here, I'm exerting a gravitational force against the Earth, and the Earth is exerting a gravitational force against me. It just so happens that the Earth is a lot bigger than me. Right? That's why I'm sitting here, and I'm not flying up into the sky, and the Earth is where it is. But we're interacting with each other. In the same, so there's this interconnectedness that exists in the entire universe. If you were to take, and remove that order, right, from the thing, that would throw everything awry. Right? Imagine taking the sun out of our solar system. What would it do to the very precise orbits that exist? I mean, there's such a precise system that we will go around and have a revolution around the entire sun so precisely that it marks exactly 1 year, year after year after year after year. I mean, how does that happen with that level of precision? Imagine if you take it out, what would happen? What would be orbiting around? It would be chaos. So in the same way that every star is placed in the universe, every word of the Quran is placed. The fact that one word is here and it comes before another, and that word is placed here rather than in that surah, there is a purpose behind the placement of every word. And if you flip it, then you're also creating chaos in the meaning. And sometimes we don't appreciate it, but the people, the Arab who really had an understanding of the language, they understood this. So there was a person who was leading the salah, and some type of Bedouin came and they joined the salah. And the imam, he made a mistake, right? Wallahu basirun, maybe he said ya'malun, ya'lamun, or he made some mistake. And the Bedouin corrected him. So later on they asked him, they said, how did you know that? Because usually the Bedouins weren't that educated or anything like that. He said, how did you know that? He said, are you hafiz? Have you memorized Quran? He said, no, I don't know anything. Said, how did you correct? He said, all I know is I know the lugha, right? Because these people were pure in their language, and that's why Imam Shafi, rahimullah, he spent 10 years with the Bedouin Arabs, even though he was Arab himself, right? But he spent it to really understand the nuances of language, because it's important for the derivation of fiqh and the understanding of the Quran and understanding of hadith. Because even one word back and forth can make even one wow in fiqh can make a huge difference, right? Huge implications in the ahkam. Because it's like, is there atful hukum, is there atful, alfaz, and I'm not going to get technical about it when you come to usul, but there's, like I said, one wow can make a difference. So what he said was, which story was I saying? We said the one about the Arab already. Mawaqi and Nujum, right? So that everything is particularly placed. So he said that there's no other, what I knew from the language is that there's no other word that could go in that particular place except this word. And that's why I corrected you, and it happened to be, that was the word that actually goes in that place in the Quran. So we take a lesson how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks to us. He speaks with precision, right? So we should also get into the habit of speaking with precision. The Prophet ﷺ, he was given jawami'ul kalim. He used to speak very little, but he was very precise in his wordings, right? It was well thought out. And the Sahaba, they were careful. They wouldn't speak that much. Sometimes they would even keep, a date stone in their mouth so that they remind themselves that be careful about what you speak, right? So it's not like they just say whatever comes to mind. Now people just say whatever. I guess part of what I do for work, because of the environment that we live in, sort of tends itself to be very careful about speech, because I work on the diagnostic side, right, like radiology. So in pathology you're making diagnoses and you have to issue reports, and sometimes when you look under a microscope it's not always clear. Because we live in such a litigious environment, more than making the science of it and the diagnosis, I'm actually crafting every report. Like, if I get sued, can I cover my back? That's how like you pick every single word. This such and such findings are suggestive of such and such, but this cannot be excluded. Because if someone comes and said that this was the diagnosis and you didn't call it, I can say, well, yes, I didn't call it because of these factors, and I've listed them over here. And I also mentioned that other diagnoses cannot be excluded, and those have been considered by the clinician. Please talk to my lawyer, right? Khalas, and then you walk away. But you have to be very careful because words matter. And in life, that's just in in our professional life, and even in the deen. Words is no. They talk about the lisan, jurmuhu saghir. Jismuhu saghir wa jurmuhu kabir. That his body is very little, but its power has a lot. You can kill a person. You can stab their heart, and you can leave scars sometimes that don't heal for decades in people's lives just by what you speak. So we have to be careful, and it's something that takes getting the habit from it. Like I know this one person, when they write reports, if they said, for example, they're so careful that if they saw only one particular cell, right? They say the cells show, or I see rare circulating. There's this particular type of cell called blast. So rare circulating blasts, right? And for that, there's a regular code that you can write, and it's easy, and you put it out. But they say that technically blast is plural, and I only saw one, so that could potentially be a lie. So he'll go back and take that code out and write it out, rare circulating blast, because now this is correct. And one of my teachers, he was on the phone with someone, and he told the person, yeah, just can you wait a sec, I'm going to be right back. And then his teacher caught him. He said, why do you say wait a sec? Why do you say wait a minute? You're going to be more than a minute. Say exactly what you mean. You should say what you mean and mean what you say. And a person يتحرى الصدق حتى يكتب من الصادقين. You have to keep on trying to be as truthful as possible until you'll be written amongst the truthful ones. And if a person becomes truthful in their tongue, then you will see a change in your amal. You will change in your aqidah. You will see a change in your iman. You will see a change in all different aspects of your spiritual life, that you become a true person. And this is one of the highest spiritual levels, right? أولئك الذين أنعم الله عليهم من النبيين. Right? Nabiyyin, highest level. What's the second thing that's mentioned in the Quran? Min Nabiyyin was Siddiqeen. Right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells people to have taqwa and how do you achieve taqwa, He doesn't say just go and hang around. He didn't say hang around the awliya. He didn't say hang around the sulaha. He didn't say hang around the dhakirin. He says وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. Be with the people who are truthful. Because when you're around people who are truthful, it treats this particular disease of dishonesty. And when a person becomes honest in their heart, then they stop lying to themselves. One of the problems that people don't change their lives is because they're always in denial about themselves. And they're not able to face their own reality. And they're always rationalizing and making excuses for themselves. But if you become honest, then you say, I said La ilaha illallah. I need to live as if Allah is my Lord. I need to follow His rules. If I'm not, then I'm lying about my La ilaha illallah. And step by step, you get your deen in order and you get your life in order. So that's one treatment, is just to learn to be very careful about what you say. The second thing is to make repentance for any time that a person might have made a lie. And then the third thing is to make true on your promises. If you say something, do it. Right? And for whatever reason, and if you're not going to do it, then just don't say it. It's better to under-promise and over-deliver, right, than over-promise and under-deliver, right? Don't tell people, and this is a very like desi thing, haha, may aurong 5 minute mein, right? And in the back of your mind, you're not going to be there for 2 hours. You know when you're saying that you're not coming for 2 hours. You say, bas thodi der, right? Just a little while. You're lying. That's a lie, right? Then tell the person, it's going to take me a while. Don't worry, I don't know exactly when it's going to be. I'm coming later. Khalas. At least you had the integrity to say what's true. And if you've actually made a statement, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu awfu bil uqud. If you've made a transaction, if you've made an ahad, then make true on it. Fulfill it. A person came to the Prophet ﷺ. He said they were supposed to meet the Prophet ﷺ at a certain time on a certain place. So when he said that, the Prophet ﷺ came to that place, he wasn't there. Then he came back the next day and he wasn't there. And the next day he wasn't there. This is like roughly the story. And then the person found out and he said, like, Ya Rasulullah, why did you keep on going? And he basically told him, like, you said you were going to come. Right? He trusted him. And it's also one very beautiful way to teach the other person the importance of truth, right? Because if you're loose about what you say, it has an impact on other people. It's very inconsiderate. It's extremely inconsiderate. So you should be thoughtful in our speech. That's the real take-home message. So we'll probably stop right here, inshallah. Let's take let's not even half an hour break, inshallah, and then we'll have the session with Sheikh Zayd. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't lie, okay, so for example, the other day my sister told me to put the cover on the table so we could eat sauce. So I didn't technically do what she asked me to do. I just threw it on the table, but it's technically on the table, so it's not lying.
Yeah. So he's a very smart kid. So sometimes there's things called like there's the law and there's the spirit of the law, right? So ideally you want to fulfill both the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. So when you said something, there's words that were said and there was also a meaning behind the words. So if you said that I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and they understood a certain meaning, you want to also fulfill not the exact words, but also the meaning of the words. Except in sometimes rare exceptional cases, then you can use what we call tawriya or double speaking, not the way that is propagated by Orientalists that that these Muslims are always doing tawriya and they're lying about everything. They really promulgate this. This is coming from sometimes Shia sectors that they've borrowed that for, and they sort of generalize it to all Muslims. Don't trust any Muslim. They're just doing tawriya. They tell you they're not going to kill you, but they're really going to kill you because they lie about everything. I mean, tawriya happens in those type of situations. Like Maulana Qasim Nanotwi, he was standing in a certain place. The British soldiers came to get him because he was leading the rebellion against the British Empire. And they said, they found him, right? That was him. And they're like, we're looking for Qasim, do you know where he is? So he was standing in a certain place, then he moved to the side. He said, oh, you mean Qasim Nanotwi? He was just right here, right? He was just right here. So technically it's true, he was just right here, but he's doing this to save his life, right? So this is similar to, for example, when Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he said, Inni saqim, right, that I am sick. He wasn't lying, right, but he had a greater purpose where he had to overturn the kufr and the shirk of the time. And technically everyone is not some days you're not going to be in the perfect health. And if you're less than perfect health, then there is some type of saqam, there's some type of unhealth with you. So he didn't lie. He said something which is true, but he meant meaning other than the meaning in a particular circumstance for a particular good cause or objective. So in those cases, in those select cases, for example, to avoid fitna. For example, if something's going to happen and your wife is going to kill you because you did X, Y, and Z, don't lie, right? You should, but sometimes you can. This is actually one of the exceptions, that to create sulh bayna dhat al-bayn, to make what's that called, join between two people who are fighting, that you can even lie, you can straight lie, right? Because the greater good in that situation is to bring two people together. That's how much it means to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have unity in the ummah. So for that you can use straight lie, but don't go to straight lies first. If you can do double talk, right, then do that. For example, two people got into a fight, right, and you said, you come to this guy and you said, Ahmed, he was saying that he told me that you're a great guy. He actually said that 3 years ago, right, before you got in the fight. So you're not technically lying, you're saying something that was true, and then you're telling him with the intent that you want them to get together and not have be in a fight and displace Allah. So that's permissible. Very good questions, okay. Zagri has good questions.
No white lies, purple lies.
There, no white lies without any reason. Oh, so why do people lie? People lie for these reasons. People sometimes lie to get worldly gain. Sometimes people will lie for to get out of trouble. right? And so usually the situation that we find ourselves lying is not really to get worldly gain. We're usually not trying to swindle people. Most Muslims are not like in that category. Some are, but many are not. A lot of times it's just something happens, you get caught, and then all of a sudden it just comes out, right? Your boss tells you, why are you late? You're like, I had a flat tire. You did not have a flat tire, right? Right? You're like, oh, my cat ruined my clothes. You don't have a cat, right? It just comes out like in that second. You don't even think. Sometimes you don't even think. So that's not okay. So even in those situations, unless there's going to be some like real big fitna or something, a person should just have integrity and speak the truth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put barakah in that, right? I know I have people who've messed up in my lab before. And they came and they're like, Dr. Hussaini, such and such happened, we missed it. And I said, well, I appreciate you telling me the truth. Let's take care of it, right? It's just, there's integrity in that. I can respect that. If they covered up and I find out that they covered up, it's not going to be pretty, right? I mean, that might be the last day you're going to be in the lab, right? It's over. Because, then you can't trust anything that they're going to do. And that can be a much, much bigger problem. So usually, as-sidqu yunji, wal-kidhba yuhlik. That truth will save you and lie will destroy you. All right, jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.